Welcome to another episode of Advisor Visionaries. I'm your host, Litan Yahav, and with me is a person I super look up to, Daniel Ramsey. Man, it's so great to have you on the show. Here, you see, I'm stuttering here, I'm so excited.
All right. I'm glad to be here, man. I hope we have some fun today.
Yeah. All right. So we were talking just before recording, so let's hit record so we get this as well. All right. So let's dive into it. So there are people out there that are,
well, we're being a leader in my industry and in the world. It's interesting because there's all these different styles of humans, and it was just the 4th of July, and I took my kids to, a hardware store, and they did what kids do, which is they were in the way, they weren't thoughtful, they're blocking some old guy. Some old guy comes in and says, "Can't you get out of the way?" And I'm like, I've got a 3-year-old, an 8-year-old, an 11-year-old. So they don't think, they're just kids, and he screams at them the day before 4th of July. And I just think, man, what is going on with this guy? What is going on in his world that he thinks it's appropriate to scream at a 3-year-old? What is wrong with this person? And I think leaders have to take everybody's perspective, everybody's opinion, and really kind of just internalize it and understand that we all come from different places. So I didn't scream back at the old man. I didn't say anything negative. I just huddled my little girls in the way and said, "Hey, look, you broke the rules. You can't block a path. You can't meander and mosey down the road, And that guy was having obviously a bad day. So let's try to be a little bit more considerate and, realize that guy's a mean guy."
Yeah, well, that probably required a lot of restraint. I guess. I don't know. I'm always in that my kids are the same ages, but I have a 3-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old almost. And I know that if something like that happens, my first response will be "Dude, calm down, back off, and shut your mouth." Yeah.
You know what's interesting about that though is what am I going to do? Fight a 60-year-old man in a hardware store in front of my daughter?
No. I think it was the best. I think you did. I think that's the smart or correct thing to do, and I think it shows your kids as well to be mindful. Think about the best course of action, even when there's that type of scenario happening around you. I guess it also shows some sort of calmness. All right, you don't need to lose it. The world might be collapsing around you, but stay calm and make the right decision. So I think I love that. Cool, man. So great to have you here. All right, so listen, I was telling you before we started, just I've been catching up on a lot of your videos, and we're both in the same peer group that you mentioned, one of them, Go Abundance. And I think we spoke first time a few years ago, and I was already really impressed. And since then, you've grown your business even bigger and better than where you used to be. How about, before we dive into the nitty gritty, just let's give a quick background for our listeners.
Yeah, so we serve a lot of high net worth individuals, financial advisor groups. If you're a licensed, investment advisor or a fiduciary of some sort for investments, and we provide staffing. So a lot of administrative support, sales, customer service, marketing, and we have about 2,500 folks in the Philippines that provide support to businesses in the US and Canada. And we're 17 years in. I've been kind of hyper focused on this business for the whole 17 years, which is unusual. And yeah, we met in a peer group, and that's kind of the summary of who I am.
Right. Well, before, I think that even the backstory to that is even, as interesting. But it's not like you grew up in the staffing world, and yeah, you started from real estate, and then hustling before that, and you studied finance and grew up in the trailer park. There's a whole backstory to that, and I thought it's just it is that, I'm not going to say the common, but I feel I'm always interested because you see successful people, and I feel the successful people who made it from, a very distant place, which isn't from money, isn't from businesses, but it's actually from the opposite of that. And then, getting that grit, which is a great word, and then you just go all in, you have to achieve it, and you have to achieve it. And I feel you see it with sports players, right? You see the the best soccer players, the best basketball players, they grew up in the hood. Like that's where they didn't go to proper, like our kids go to, soccer practice and basketball practice. Like they didn't grow up that way. They found like a bad ball and were just kicking it around it. So I feel like it gives you a different type of grit, but not grit. I don't know what the word is, sort of durability, or like something that, you're just going to go all in and do it until you win, right? How much of sort of your success do you think is thanks to that, and how much do you think is the things you actually gathered in your adult life?
Pretty young, I knew that my parents hadn't figured it out, which I think is unusual. Like at 7, 8, I was like, man, there's something going on with our home. Like this doesn't feel right. And I grew up pretty poor. My mom gave blood for food one week. We were on government cheese. Like, I don't know if any of your audience has ever had government cheese. It's like an acquired taste, and it's like it's something that you want as an adult when you grow up poor. So I'm that guy who pretty early on was like, hey, I think business is the path for me. Like I think that's my way out of poverty. And so I just started pretty early, consuming everything I could, whether it was business, magazines, articles. Remember as a kid going, I want to start a business, but I don't know what. And so I just started looking at different franchisees, like what business could I have here, and what business could I, build, and what would I do? And my first job was I was a newspaper salesperson. As a kid, we had a bike. My brother and I would run in the neighborhood and we'd deliver papers. And the person who like got us into that, she said, hey, if you want to make more money, you just have to knock on a door and ask them if they want to buy a newspaper. And I was like, that's it? Yeah. And then they have to sign this form, and then you'll make an extra $10 a month. And I was like, really? Okay. So I just started knocking on doors. And I think,
As a 10-year old.
yeah, we were young, man, 10, 11, something like that. And, the opportunity for me was my parents couldn't give me the things that I wanted or that my friends had. And if I wanted it, I had to work for it. And, as a parent now, I have to manufacture that kind of need or hunger in my children. It's really difficult because they grew up, they've got a pool, we've got a cabin, we just have things. And when I was a kid, I didn't have things. And, they're like, why can't we just Amazon it, Dad? Just have it. My favorite is we're traveling, and my kids are like, Dad, can we get into the big chairs? On the airplane, that's what they call business class, the big chairs. Why do we have to sit in the back? I'm like, well, it's only a 3-hour flight. It's, we don't need to spend the extra $2,000 a seat. Um, so yeah, early on, I was hungry. I wanted to be able to buy lunch and go to lunch with my friends. I wanted, clothes that weren't hand-me-down clothes, and so if I wanted any of those things, I had to work for it. And that made me pretty resourceful as a young human, and not adverse to work. Like I think it's one of our family values. Ramsey's do work. And the reason is because that's been my, key to success, has just been willing to learn the new skill set, read the book, find the information, and then somehow put it into action within my, businesses or personal life. And, it's not overly complicated. That's the other thing. Most entrepreneurs are like, oh, how do I get started? Well, you just start. You'll learn, and then you'll kind of change strategies over time. But literally, I started out selling newspapers door to door, and that was my first job.
That's awesome. I love what you said about your kids, right? Because yeah, so can you imagine is your 11-year-old a boy or a girl?
I've got 3 girls. I've been blessed.
Oh,
I'm a
okay.
girl dad.
Yeah, so I have 3 boys, and I don't know if I'm blessed or cursed, but I have 3 amazing boys. But my 9-year-old, I can't even imagine him going and knocking on doors. Like I wish he could. I always try to sort of like get. It's like I don't even know about if it's guts. It's just being shy and like being out there, and like because all right, you need to, so go try and do it. So it's like we're always also thinking about how do we incentivize them to go outside their comfort zone, do things that are for their own independence, and making their own money. And so I think it's super important. And especially because like it's so easy to do could go the other way, right? Business class. I mean, it's so we fly, international, and we did the mistake once of going international business with my kids, and since then, they're like, why doesn't the chair go down all the way? Like, they're used to like the full bed, flat bed. Anyway, yeah. All right, so you transitioned, you also missed that. All right, so you had that real estate brokerage business, and the global financial crisis happened, and then you found yourself looking for like ways to scale that, and your brother, I think your brother, right, with a virtual assistant, and that started. And did you know, like, from the get-go, this is going to be a big business? Like,
No, no. In fact, so each of the opportunities that I've been involved with, I just kind of happened. And I wish I could say I was intentional. But I was like any human. In the beginning, I bought a house from a real estate person who, you know, he called me one day and he was like, "Hey, what's your home address?" I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Well, I'm going to mail you the keys for your new home." And I was like, okay, here's my address. And I had no idea how real estate, professionals should behave. But, when you're buying your first home, it should be celebrated. And so once I found out that he made $6,000 selling a house and the lender made like $8,000 or $9,000, I was like, wow, he really didn't do much work. I think I can do that job. And so in each of the scenarios in businesses, same with mortgages. I was at some point a mortgage person. I'm a developer. I have a contractor's license. And so I've got a huge real estate background. And in each scenario, I was just like, well, maybe I can do that. And I just kind of figured out how, which is unique, I know. But I would just keep taking like whatever the next step was, I would just take that step. And so I started as a realtor and a broker, and then at some point I needed talent for my own brokerage and my own kind of entrepreneurial endeavors. Found somebody in the Philippines. They were amazing, and this was before, the 4-hour work week. So it was before virtual assistants were a thing. Now there's a whole industry code. It's virtual assistant services. Like that's a like a category, and it was a category that we created really back in 2008.
that's amazing. So, and it did, I mean, it did scale up to be like a massive staffing agency.
Yeah.
That also added a lot of technology to it, right?
Yeah,
And
so one of the challenges, all of our folks are remote, and our customers, in especially in the banking, financial, investment advising world, security is such a big deal. So not only do we have like some controls around, access and security, but we created this technology that kind of, tracks what they're up to, where they go, what they're doing throughout their day, which provides, more comfort and security for our customers.
is that only for security purposes, or are there also like productivity components to that tech?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the things, security, productivity. It's a way to, kind of keep projects, you know, moving down the road. We use it for payroll. We use it for billing our customers. So it's a full, I would call it like a staffing, productivity, ERP, software kind of thing. And it's really cool. A lot of our customers are actually licensing that technology for their internal employees, the stateside folks who have remote teams. And so this idea of, sure, if you want to work remotely, you can. You just have to use this software. Um,
That's an interesting play, right? I mean, obviously, you can take that in various directions. Um, you know, but back to the tech stack. And I don't know if this is proprietary, if you want to dive into this or not, but like, are you adding in more automations into the capabilities that you offer customers vis-a-vis your staffing, your offshore
That's such a
assistance?
yeah, that's such a great question. I'm getting that question more and more as we kind of do more podcasts in this moment because AI is such a big deal, automation is such a big deal. Our customers like literally we have 1,500 customers and they all use some different version of a different platform. And so for us, it's really hard because again, there's just so many different customers, so many different business models. It's very difficult to add AI or a platform that our virtual assistants would use. Conversely, what we've been doing is like internally, Chat GPT is something that we use. Google's Gemini is something that we use. And so we're having our virtual professionals use those on behalf of a customer, but we're not developing anything in-house. I'm not going to compete with OpenAI. I'm definitely not going to compete with Google. They're going to build stuff at such speed that we will just use that as a tool. And actually, this is kind of how I view all the changes. I grew up in a time, like I started my business back when you had to have an office, you had to have a landline, you had to have a fax machine. Like I had a fax machine. So when I got a cell phone, I was disconnected from having to be at the office every day. And so it was like a tool that made me more productive and gave me more flexibility and freedom. Um,
Right. But same thing goes for your employees in the Philippines, right? They can be more productive and their output can be 10x their current output if they have their own, tools. But if I understand what you're saying, they work with so many different other third-party tech stacks because of the firms they support that it's endless. And so you can't really have that 10x, right? That's what you're saying basically.
Well, what's interesting is internally we use Salesforce, and they like 3 months ago, Salesforce just said, "Oh, we have the data, and we're an AI company now." And I'm like, "Wait, you're an AI company? I thought you were the world's largest CRM." Now, just calling yourself an AI automation, company doesn't make it so. Like, no customer at Salesforce is saying, "I'm going to go to you guys for my AI." Like that's just not a thing. And so I'm not going to pretend that we are something that we're not. What we do, and it's very clear, is we help growing organizations who need talent so that they can execute at a higher level and drive growth and hopefully get some leverage in their, function, their business, their world. And that's what we do really, really well.
Awesome. All right. So I want to segue into another aspect of sort of the more personal stuff or other things that you've sort of said that I've heard you talk about. And the overlaying aspect of that is you come across as like a super confident guy in a good way, right? Not being like, too arrogant, not being arrogant, but like really confident. Like it gives other people confidence, like to listen to you and talk with you. So have you always been this confident, or are there times where you're not confident? Like, what do you do to like stay in that mindset of like positive confidence? Like, do you do any like routines that keep you in this mindset?
Yeah, my morning, I mean, I did a cold plunge this morning. There's a lot of people out there who talk through like, hey, how do you stay positive? You have to remind yourself as a leader that your job is to serve people. So, like, people ask, what do you do? I'm a CEO. Well, guess what? I'm always helping somebody else win. And so, as long as you're helping somebody and figuring out how they can get a win out of the relationship that you're in with them, like that feels really good. And it's easier for me to be in a space of positivity when I'm helping. Like that's probably my number one thing. It's one of our core values at the company. We're in service of others, and it makes everything really clean, right? If I'm helping somebody else achieve their goals, like it's just not selfish. It's helping them. And so just makes my world a lot easier. I have a pretty solid morning routine. My wife and I got into a fight last night. You'll love this. We're fighting, and it actually ended up we're laughing, giving each other hugs and kisses. But I said something stupid, as a man might, and ultimately we were able to talk it through. And I'm like, logically, here's where my mind goes to. And she's like, well, it doesn't feel good. And, we're talking it through. And the reality is, you know, I think back to your question about being positive, I just explained to her my line of thinking and showed her that I was just being a human and a person and logically, you know, explaining what I thought, and that pissed her off, but she at least understood, right? And then I apologized for, hurting her feelings, that wasn't my intent. And so I think you can operate in the world not needing to screw the other person, not needing to, win, not needing to drive your thing home. You can actually just be a human and relate with people and tell them what you're thinking and feeling and hopefully help them. So that's generally my
But
approach.
what pisses you off? Because you don't seem like a guy that gets mad too often. Like, do you? Like, what do you lose it? Like, what?
Yeah, I hate people who are dishonest. Like it's really hard for me when, we're in a space of dishonesty. I'm a really loyal friend, boss, human, spouse, all the things. So, it's difficult when I don't feel like somebody else is being honest. That's a challenge for me. And so, in our space and what we do, like um we don't have to accept every single client. I live in this weird world where, I'm like trying to help a client get back some time and grow their business. And then I'm trying to help, a virtual professional, build a career and provide for their family. And then at the same time, I'm trying to grow my business, right? So I'm consistently managing and navigating these three different and equal needs within our business. And so anytime that they don't align, we just don't do business with that person. And that makes life a lot easier.
Do you think your business needs to keep on growing?
I think if you're not growing a business, you're, I think there's growth and there's everything else. And I don't want to be in that everything else category. Because the moment you stop innovating, the moment you start, advancing your business, the moment you stop bringing in new people to create opportunity that's mutually beneficial for everyone, that feels like the alternate of what business is supposed to be. So yeah, I believe in growth, not at all costs, but certainly consistent, kind of thoughtful, measured growth over a long time. That's my perspective.
So what's the exit plan for Mod?
I love that question. I have none. And this is what's crazy.
Well, you get asked that because I haven't heard. I thought it was a unique question. I feel like everything I'm asking you've been asked. Like,
We get asked that all the time. In fact, maybe a decade ago, I had a VC because we're really close to San Francisco, and they're calling and knocking, and this guy is like, "Hey, I want to meet you," and he was a friend of a friend, so I was like, "Yeah, cool, come on in." So we sat literally like right over there in my office, two chairs, looked, and he's like, "Well, I'd never invest in this company because you're not all in." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I'm not all in." At that point I was 7, 8 years in, and he's like, "Well, because you're profitable and you're growing and you're not actually investing back into the business every cent you make, and you're not take you." And I was like, "What is wrong with you?" We've grown over the 17 years every year except for 1 year. Um, and we've done it profitably without capital, without, partners, without um and just, focus on the long-term growth. And
yeah,
it's
VCs do not know how. I mean, as a VC backed company, there's a world where VCs are really good for a company, but I think when a company is like, you know, operating bootstrapped, profitable, VCs don't know really how to deal with that. That's like maybe larger private equity plays like buyout deals and stuff like that, which is a different ballgame.
yeah.
Yeah, VCs need the risk, they need the upside, they need the 100x whatever it is. But the fact that you've built a bootstrap business to be so big and you're enjoying it, man, that's amazing. Like,
I think this is a mistake that a lot of people make. You know what I enjoy is the game of figuring out what's next. I enjoy playing, chess, moving humans into different positions so that we can cross the board and take the other companies. Like I enjoy motions, and people are like, "Well, why would you do this for 17 years? And what's your exit? When do you want to exit?" I'm like, there's not another venue for me to learn the skills required to become a 300, 400, $500 million company. Like this is that one area that I can develop myself, that I can learn, that I can build a team around. It's like this is what I love. I love doing this stuff, and I can't imagine, you know, thinking about an exit and not having that opportunity with my team.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's admirable, man. I mean, the everyone's like, well, why don't you just take some, I mean, the exit or the buyout or the IPO or whatever it is, the objective there is there are two actually. One is you get take some more money off the table. But two, and I don't know how this is structured, and again, I hope we're not stepping on any stones on any toes here, but like if employees have equity, that's when they get their liquidity event. And so that's usually the path that VC backed companies choose. I don't know how the bootstrap world works as much. It's like I'm the outlier in our peer group of GoBundance, like there basically are no VC backed founders out there. So like they're usually, like when I talk about ESOPs and you know raising rounds over rounds, it's like they don't know what I'm talking about. So I mean, again, I might be totally out of my ballpark here asking that question, but
I think it's fine. I mean, we're organized as an LLC. We have really rich compensation packages for our leaders here at MyOutDesk, and then we probably at worst we're at market, at best we're above market when it comes to employee compensation, and that even reverberates over into the Philippines because and this is one of my more, um, I think, interesting lessons. Turnover is the enemy of scale, meaning as you're trying to grow a business, you spend all this time and you invest in your employees and people and leaders, and you teach them like, these are the values for the company. These are what our customers care about. These are what our VPs care about, our virtual professionals. This is what our market is. These are who your competitors are. This is how we go to market, and this is what we say, and you spend all this energy and effort, and then they go somewhere else for a better, you know, offer because they make an extra 2 or 3 grand or 5 grand or even 100 grand. Like, it doesn't matter. What you want in a business to create long-term value is just people to stay, and
right.
really managing, the non-performers out, and the people who are really great, you want to keep them as long as possible because that will create over the long term a lot of value.
Right. I love the VP is the virtual professional.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that. Nice. All right. I mean, yeah, well, you did mention something that I did want to talk about. And I don't know if we have time, but like just one of the videos you made, you were talking about those like steps. I think you released like a few days ago. Do you want to talk about that for a second or should we wrap it up?
Yeah, sure.
Um, so you were talking about the fact that identifying that something is broken, like that's step one with a business,
Yeah.
right? And then once you identify that, which is a big step that something's broken, the next step is find someone who solved that, learn what they did, and then implement it. And then if that worked, great. If it didn't, do the cycle again, right?
Yeah.
So, but I want to ask on that. So when something's broken, it sounded like you were talking about something like with me as a leader, something's broken.
It's always the leader.
Well, I agree. There's always the leader's responsibility to find out what the problem is and how to solve it. Um, but identifying what the problem is, it sounds really trivial, but it's freaking hard many of the times.
Hmm.
Like, because finding a mentor after you identify what the problem is, it makes it a little easier to identify who the best mentor is to solve that problem. But what about finding what the problem is? Like, how would you approach that if it's hard to identify what the problem? Like, the result of there is a problem, and then the result is whatever revenue isn't growing as expected.
Yeah. So let's dive in because this is a beautiful topic. And what you saw was like a condensed version of like the summary, but here's the deal, man. Anytime in life you don't like what's happening, whether it's with your wife, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with your business, your physical appearance, doesn't matter. The issue is most people will go through a thing without reflecting around that thing. So they'll have a challenge, They'll feel upset about that challenge, want it to change, but they won't spend the time of actual self-reflection, looking back at history. Like, how did this problem persist? Who was involved in this problem? What were the skills that led me to actually make that mistake? What are the things that I need to develop as a human? And so most people will have an experience, hate that experience, but then jump on Netflix or grab another beer or hang out with their friends. The superpower here is to really reflect on what actually happened and go deep. And I use a lot of journaling. I spend a lot of time doing vision boards. We were just in Tahoe for the 4th of July. My entire family is doing vision boards. We're reviewing their goals. What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to address? Most people can dream. Most people can say, I want this thing, or I want to be this human, or I want to attract the right talent. Everybody can do that. What most people don't do is really sit in the moment and reflect on their past experiences that have led to, where they are in life. And we've all heard the quotes, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. That student is ready is what I'm talking about. It's like, how do you really self-reflect? And sometimes I love having peers, because, when somebody really knows you, it's hard to lie to them. And they can call you out on that stuff. Having people in your business that, aren't afraid to say no to power. Like, hey, this is a problem for you, Daniel. I'm certain of it. I see it in the day-to-day. I think you might want to approach this differently. Being the kind of human that can accept other people's, thoughts and concerns and opinions. That's what's required to actually make a transition and break through and achieve and have anything you want in life. That's the goal. If you can self-reflect on your experiences, you can pretty much achieve anything you want.
Dude, that's a mic drop moment. I appreciate it. Awesome. That was super interesting. Thank you for sharing all that insights. Is there anything else you want to share, like how people can get in touch with you or anything else?
Yeah, just jump on our website, myoutdesk.com. That's our main kind of website. That's where we kind of collect all of our customers. But you can register, get a consultation. What's cool about our process is, one of our differentiators that is a big deal is that we'll break down like, hey, where are you in the journey? What's your revenue? What's your tech stack? Who's on your team? What exactly are you trying to accomplish? And then with that information, we can craft a really strategic plan around how a virtual professional might help your business. And with that plan, then we go to market and hire the right human. So anybody who's thinking about this, we'd love to serve you. And then alternatively, I'm everywhere on social media. So come find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us, and thank you, man, for sharing all this great insights, and we'll be in touch.